3 words got a man crucified in Baghdad. Not theft, not violence. 3 words. Ana al-Ḥaqq. I am the truth. The court called it blasphemy. They flogged him, cut off his hands, and raised him on the banks of the Tigris to die. And the witnesses all reported the same impossible detail. As they lifted him up to kill him, he was smiling. What could 3 words mean that a man would smile while being executed for them? Hold that question, because that smile is the doorway into the most misunderstood tradition in Islam. And by the end, 3 things will make sense that don't yet. Why the greatest scholar in Islam, a man sitting at the very top of the religious world, walked away from all of it overnight. Why one short sentence, only God is, got called both the highest truth in Islam and a crime worth dying for. And what Hallaj actually saw, that let him smile on the gallows. Keep all 3 open, we will close everyone. If you have heard of Sufism, you probably picture one of 2 things: men in white robes spinning, or incense, poetry, something vaguely mystical floating above religion like smoke above a fire. Both images are real, and both miss the point entirely. Sufism is not a performance, not an aesthetic, not a sect or a spiritual hobby. Sufism is Islam's interior. Every religion has an outside and an inside. The outside is the law, the rituals, the boundaries that shape a life. The inside is the living encounter the law was always pointing toward. In Islam, the outside is Sharia, the path of law. The inside is Haqiqa, the path of truth. A Sufi has not abandoned religion. A Sufi is someone who went looking for what religion was pointing at. Here is the difference. In one image, you can read every book ever written about fire, memorize the chemistry, the physics, the whole history of combustion. But until heat touches your skin, you do not know fire. The law gives you the knowledge of fire. Sufism says, now go stand close enough to burn. But here is the part most people get backwards. The law and the fire are not enemies. It is the very same religion that hands you the book and then dares you to feel the heat. One without the other is incomplete. Knowledge with no burning is cold. Burning with no knowledge is dangerous. Sufism is not an escape from the law. It is what the law was for. And at the heart of it is the most radical idea in the history of religious thought. You know the word. Tawheed, the oneness of God. But the Sufi hears something more in it. Not only that God is one, that only God is. Now, here is where it should unsettle you a little. Because if that is true, it does not stay a fact about God out there. It becomes a fact about you. Everything you see, the mountains, the cities, the human face, the joy and the suffering, is not separate from God. It is God appearing, God looking at God through 10,000 eyes, including the eyes you are reading this with. Careful here, this is not everything is God. In the crude sense, the thing critics call pantheism. The Sufis are precise. The wave is not the ocean, yet the wave is nothing but water. And this idea has a name, Waḥdat al-Wujūd. And for 8 centuries it has been the most fought over sentence in Islam. Critics called it heresy. But hear how the Sufis defend it, straight from the Quran. Do you not see how your Lord stretches out the shadow? A shadow is real. You see it. It moves across the ground. And yet a shadow owns nothing. No light of its own, no substance of its own. It exists only because something casts it. Take the light away, and it is gone. That, the Sufis say, is the whole universe. God's shadow. Real, but never independent. Existing, but only through Him. And that includes you, right now, reading this. Or picture one white light passing through stained glass. Red, blue, gold, pour out, 1,000 colors. And every one of them is nothing but the one light, wearing a shape. To say, only God is, was never to say the shadow is the sun. It was to say, nothing stands on its own but Him, which brings us back to Hallaj. When a human being fully meets this reality, when the veil between the self and the real finally dissolves, the Sufis call it fana, not death, not nothingness. The ego, the imagined separate self, disappears like a wave, realizing it is water. And what remains is what was always there. That is what Hallaj was pointing at. But notice what he did not say. He never said, "I am God." He said, "I am the truth," meaning, the one who used to call himself I is gone, and only the real remains to speak. Now you know why he could smile. But this is the turn most people miss. Sufism is not a philosophy you read about. It is a road you walk, and if you ever did, here is what the road looks like. The vehicle is a tariqa, a spiritual order. Each carries a silsila, an unbroken chain of transmission, teacher to student, back to the Prophet, peace be upon him himself. At the center is the sheikh, not a priest, not a mediator between you and God, but a physician of the soul, someone who has walked the road and knows where the cliffs are, and the practices are precise. Dhikr, the repetition of God's names until the tongue stops and the heart keeps going. Sama, sacred listening, made not to entertain but to unlock what is closed in the chest. And Khalwa, retreat, 40 days of solitude until the noise of the world falls away and something else begins to speak. Now, if you come from an Islamic background, you may have been told Sufism is bid'ah, innovation, or worse, shirk. This is a real tension, and it deserves an honest answer, not a dismissal. The critics are not simply wrong. The safeguards of the law exist for good reason, and there are currents within Sufism that drifted far from their foundations. Discernment matters. But here is what the critique usually forgets. Al-Ghazālī, whom scholars call the proof of Islam, whose Ihya revived Islamic thought, was a Sufi. And remember the scholar I promised you at the start, the one who walked away from everything? This is him. He held the greatest academic post in Baghdad, and one day could no longer speak in front of his students, and left all of it because he realized knowing about God is not the same as knowing God. Imam al-Nawawi, whose hadith collections sit in every Islamic library on earth, walked this path too. And the root of every Sufi practice, the cave of Hira, the night prayers, the 40 days of solitude before revelation, is the way of the Prophet, peace be upon him himself. Sufism did not enter Islam from outside. It grew from the soil of revelation. The question is not whether the interior belongs in Islam. It is whether you will go through the door into the room that was always there. And the ones who went through left us something that outlasted every empire that tried to stop them. Rabia al-Adawiyya, a freed slave of Basra, who refused to love God out of fear of hell or hope of paradise. I love you not for any reward. I love you because you are worthy of love. Rumi, whom the whole world quotes without knowing why, whose grief at losing his teacher Shams poured out as 60,000 verses. Not poetry, evidence. And Ibn Arabi, who mapped the interior of existence with a precision unequaled in 9 centuries. The human being is the mirror in which God sees himself. These were not romantics. They were cartographers of a country most people don't believe exists until they arrive there. We live in an age of information without experience. Religion reduced to a shell, with no one shown the pearl inside. Sufism says the pearl was always there. It says the ache you feel, that sense that there must be something more, is not a problem to be fixed. It is the call of the beloved. Before you entered this world, your soul was asked one question, am I not your Lord? And it answered yes. The longing is just the soul remembering that answer. Sufism is the science of remembering it. So, what is Sufism? It is the love hidden inside the law, the fire inside the candle, the ocean inside every drop. It is Islam's oldest, deepest invitation. Stop reading the menu and taste the meal. And Hallaj, the man we began with, destroyed by the institution, smiling as they raised him up, now you understand the smile. He had already tasted it. He was not losing his life. He was finally, completely, coming home.